Hello again. This is Pastor Tim coming to you from Bend and Lomita United Methodist Churches in Central Texas. We have been talking about Scripture and trying to give insight and a place to stand when you try to interpret Scripture, so that it won't be quite so mysterious or so difficult to understand. We figure that Bible knowledge is an important part of faith. To know the story is important to say that this is part of our story, how God is part of our lives because God was part of their lives. So we are talking in preparation for Easter. One of the things we're doing is the different parables that Jesus taught, because Jesus taught parables that were a window into the eternal. They were a window into the mind of God, and let us know where we stand in the eternal economy of life, so that we can begin to move forward, so we can begin to grow in our faith in God and in Jesus Christ. One of the biggest stories that's told is the Good Samaritan. Now that's a very interesting story on Jesus' part, because in his time they would not have used the term Good Samaritan. That would have been exactly opposite. That's like saying the good mafia member or the good hitman. That wouldn't make any sense at all, because the Samaritans were a separate people. They were semi-Jewish. They accepted the idea of the Jewish faith, but they had their own place of worship. They were considered very lowly as far as the Jews were concerned, because they cooperated with invaders. They did things that were not acceptable. And so Samaritans were like your black sheep in the family, the cousin that you didn't talk about. They're the people that were semi-like you, but not really. And sometimes the people who are the closest to you are the one you fight with the most, not the ones who are completely different. That's an area that don't even have any understanding. But those closest to you, you fight with. And so that was the Samaritans. They didn't follow all the rules of the Jewish faith, and so they were looked down upon. So Jesus begins this parable. Talks about a man going down to Jericho. Now, if he was going down to Jericho by himself, he was not a very wise man, because there were robbers and thieves and murderers out in the wilderness. That's why they built walls around the cities, to keep not only animals out, but to keep people out who were unwanted. And so to walk by yourself through the Badlands, so to speak, to enemy territory, was not very wise in the first place. And he fell among thieves. Thieves looked at him and said, there's an easy target. And they beat him and left him for dead. They thought he was a goner. He was no help was coming. But he was in the ditch, and one of the leaders of the synagogue comes through. This is the religious person, the person who studies about what God does and what God believes, and God's love and grace, and teaches that to other people, guides them in that understanding. And yet he saw the person in the ditch and must have looked dead to him. And there's a prohibition against touching anyone who is dead. You become unclean. And so he decided to pass by on the other side. He didn't want to risk his personal uncleanliness. And then a lay person in the synagogue passed by on the other side, because he didn't want to be contaminated either. He didn't want to get involved. So he just left the Jewish person in the ditch. And now, the people who were listening at this point, who were used to having leaders bashed, they were used to having somebody tell them how the leaders are misleading them and how they're not good people, and the really good people, the common ordinary folks. And so they would have expected to say, well, okay, an average Jewish guy comes by and helps him out. But it was a complete shock to find that Jesus said a Samaritan came by. That was not, that was the mafia, that was the cartel, that was all the things that they would have disliked, and they would have expected that guy to pass by on the other side too. But he did something very different. He stopped and picked up the man and tended his wounds and put him on his donkey. He gave up riding so he could put the man, carry the man to the nearest hotel or inn and have him taken care of at that place. There were no hospitals, there were no doctors, so to speak, but he had to just lay and try to get well. And so the man then paid for the staying at the hotel and said, I'll be back to settle up anything else that happens. Now, the man who was in the ditch, if he'd had a choice, he probably would have told the Samaritan just to go on by. I'll wait for somebody else, because he wouldn't have liked the Samaritan. That's the whole point, that some of the people who are we look down upon the most, some of the people who we dislike, who we think of as enemies, they're the ones who can carry the love of God, love and grace of God better than anybody else. And so we shouldn't look down on people that are not like us. They may do the most help. So that's the part of the story of the Samaritan. And this suggests to us that we take a different way of looking at all God's children and being child of God, and that help can come from the most unusual people in the most unusual way. And so we need to be that person to offer the help to somebody who is least likely, who we might even consider our enemy or very much unlike us, to help them out, and we could all be brothers and sisters together. That's the story of the Good Samaritan that can give us a lesson in as we prepare for Easter. Okay, I'll see you next time.